Good morning and welcome to Peace Out. We are all learning together to peace out. I'm having to practice it this morning already. I don't know about you, right? It is a crazy time in our world, but it's always a good time to trust God, no matter what. You know, we look at all these stories in the Bible here of all these people who trusted God and had faith. Last night in our James Bible study, it was probably the best Bible study ever we've had. And we just got into some faith and the actions that come because of our faith, not the actions we do to prove we have faith, but the actions that just happen to come because we had faith. We act on what we really believe. And I have said that for years, that we act on what we truly do believe. If we don't believe something, we're not going to act on it. We believe we act, our actions will line up with what we really believe, no matter what we actually say we believe, right? But our actions will prove what we believe. So we were talking about that sort of things, and then we were talking about so many different areas, and the scripture came back up in our discussion and in my mind and in our discussion. And so I've been thinking about it ever since. So for like about 12 hours now, right? And it's actually in Ezekiel 14, and I'm not going to read the chapter, but in this chapter, Ezekiel's God is expressing, he says, if I decided to wipe everything out, and if God wanted to, he could. He's not going to, but he could, right? He says, if I cause the wild beast to come and just ravage the area, if I cause the sword to come on the land, if I cause pestilence in the land, if I decided to do all these things, and he's really upset, if God was really mad, and he decides to just wipe out a land or a whatever, he says, I would save 3 people only. Now, these people didn't even live at the same time, right? In our time continuum here, right? But he said, I will deliver Job, Daniel, and who was the other one? Noah. Job, Daniel, and Noah, and not their families. Now, remember, Noah built the ark, which was his display of faith because God said do it, and he did it. And man, it took 75 years, give or take years, and it was 3 football fields long, and he didn't have any power tools. He had to go cut out the trees. Matter of fact, it's kind of funny, but as he cut out these trees and built the ark, it gave enough time for new trees to completely grow to maturity, right? 75 years would, right? And so, but Noah got to take his family on the ark. God said, get your sons, their daughters. Well, they needed to replenish the earth, right? But in this passage, God's going, if I really decide to wipe everything out, Job, Daniel, and Noah can save themselves. I'll save those 3 because they trust in me, but not their families. Nobody else, just them, right? And I thought that was so interesting. Why did he pick these 3 men? Why Job, Noah, and Daniel? Why those 3? I got other people. Why not? Why didn't he say Abraham? Right? I mean, Abraham was the friend of God. Why didn't he say David? David was a man after God's own heart, but he picked these 3. And as I think about these 3 people, they lived in the most adverse, politically charged environments that we could even imagine, right? Which we are getting closer to being able to imagine in our world today, right? But Job's wasn't so much politically, but he lost everything he had. His children, his family, his heritage, his money, his life, his health, everything. And yet he still trusted God in the middle of that. And God restored him. Daniel was a captive. He lived all of his life, as far as when he was a young man when he went into captivity. And we read in the end of Daniel, he says, God, I've been reading, and you said you're going to come get us in 70 years. And I added it up, and it's been 70 years. When are you going to come? And 70 years. So he lived 70 years in captivity. His entire life almost was as a slave. God prospered him in that, but he had faith. He had faith enough to say, I am going to pray every day, even if you're going to throw me in the lion's den. I don't care. I'm not going to change my faith because you have a different political view. I'm not going to change my faith because it offends you. I'm not going to change my faith because I'm going to trust God. I'm going to pray. It says when they made the edict and you're going to die if you pray to anything, any person, any entity but the king, you will go into the lion's den. And it says, just like always before, Daniel went to his room, opened his window. He could have prayed silently. He did not change his actions because of political pressure. And I don't like to talk politics. I hate politics, and I hate them even more today than I did yesterday, right? But he didn't change because they made up a law somewhere. He says, I'm going to serve God. And so we look at him just living his life in this environment with no chance of marrying. No, they took away his ability to have children, to raise them in the faith. Now, he probably had spiritual children. We look at the 3 Hebrew children that came with him, and he was a leader in the land, and he probably taught them, but they had to do it more secretive because it wasn't the culture of the land, that he was a slave in that land. And yet God says, I honor Daniel because he stood up in adversity. He stood up to it and continued to trust God. We have Noah. He don't even know what an ark is. He don't even know what rain is. He doesn't even know. And yet God says, build an ark. And he goes, okay. And he just starts building. No questions. He's fighting the people don't know what rain is. They probably said, you're crazy, Noah. Water's going to fall out of the sky? Because it had never rained before, right? It had come up from the earth to water the earth. And God released the waters from the heavens and brought the waters up and flooded the earth. And they didn't know what a flood was. They didn't know what rain was. They didn't even know what an ark was. And yet Noah goes, okay. And God gave him these specific measurements and how big to make it, 3 football fields long without power tools. That's dedication. That's being totally dedicated to whatever God tells me, no matter how big it looks, no matter how bad it feels, no matter how whatever, I'm going to trust God. These 3 men did that in adverse situations, and I can use their lives to encourage me today to continue standing up and piecing out no matter what we see going on in this crazy world, because it has gotten so crazy. The last few days have revealed to us how crazy this world really is and how far from God, how far from right people want to be. It's heart-wrenching to watch the things going on in our world today. But the good thing is that God has not changed. He's still God. He's still on the throne, and we can still peace out because he hasn't changed a bit. We just see things a lot differently all of a sudden, but we can see him more clearly when we look at him. We don't want to look at the things around us. We want to just keep looking back to him, go, trust you, God. I'm going to take your peace. No matter what I see going on around me, I can still get God's peace. I can walk in total peace. That's what these 3 guys did. No matter what was going on around them, they just went right back to God. They said, don't pray, Daniel. He goes, okay, let me go pray about that. He went right back to praying. Noah, everybody's saying, you're crazy. You don't even know what you're talking about. He goes, okay, well, I'll talk to you after I build the ark. We'll talk later. Maybe not. You're going to drown, but I can talk later, but I got to do what God says first. And then we got, Job that says, though God slays me, though he kills me, I will still trust him because my Redeemer lives, and he didn't even understand the concept of redemption like we understand it today. Amazing people who just trusted God. We can do that too. Matter of fact, right now, we need to do that too. But today, I'm going to peace out because I've served the same God these guys did. And I'm going to trust God that he's got my interest at heart and that he's still giving us peace, grace, and mercy for today. No matter what unfolds, he's got us. See you next week. Have a great weekend.